Hi everyone, I'm Wvssim. I'm an artist, producer, all that stuff, and I'm really excited to be here today. I've never done a podcast before, so I'm looking forward to this, and hopefully this will allow the general public to get to know who I am a little bit more. So yeah.
Yeah, man. A big part of why I wanted you on, and you mentioned it yourself when we were DMing, and it's a really big part of what I've been talking about on the podcast with various people. One of the reasons, like one of the main reasons, was that you did a lot of your music projects and you did a lot of your music work while you were in school, and you were working. It's not like you were just in school, like you were going in on school, you were looking forward to grad, like you had the whole thing planned out. I want to know when you started creating music, where that started, and how it came about. Tell me about that first.
As a kid, when I was around 3, 4 years old, my parents, they just threw me in piano and they said, listen, you're going to do this, like whether you like it or not. And, in hindsight, obviously, I'm eternally grateful for that. But they threw me into piano and they're like, yeah, just, this is like learning a language, but in a different way. And they explained it to me later on that, that learning an instrument is kind of unlocking a different side of your intelligence. So, I was down and I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's learn piano. I'll do it. Whatever. I was a kid. I didn't really understand much of it. To me, it was just you press a key, it makes a noise, and so on and so forth. So I came across a few DAWs. I didn't really enjoy a lot of them, and then I stumbled upon FL Studio, and I was like, okay, this I like. So I downloaded it at the around the start of 2017. So around, I'd say, 6 years ago. And I remember during that year, I had a spare in the afternoon. So I would have about like an hour lunch and then an hour and a half of nothing. So what I would do is I would just go sit in the hallway at my school, and I would put, I had my dad's old like work laptop, and I had my ear pods before the AirPods were even a thing. At least before I could even buy
Yeah.
them. And that's how I started. I was looking up like free VST plugins and drum kits and stuff, and I was watching a bunch of different YouTubers to try and learn. And in 2019, I remember this. It was in the summer of 2019 in my first year, and I was living alone, well, with my ex-girlfriend at the time. And she was out, my roommates weren't home. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna try something. So I made a beat, and it was incredible. At the time, it was incredible. I loved it. And I wrote some lyrics. I hopped on the mic and I was like, you know what? I'm going to mess around and see what happens.
Mm.
And that is now what we know today as the song called Dead to Me. That
Yeah.
was the first time I ever picked up a mic and recorded. And when my ex came home, I showed it to her. I'm like, yo, just let me know if you like this, right? I played her the song. She's like, oh my God, like, who is that? That sounds really good. I was like, yeah, that's me. She didn't believe me. She didn't believe me. I had to pull up the FLP. I had to show her my raw vocals. I had to
Uh-huh.
prove it to her. And it was that moment where I was like, you know what? Like, maybe with a bit of, refining and learning and stuff like that, I could just do the whole thing.
Yeah.
I could make the beat. I could write the lyrics. I could sing. I could mix my vocals. I can mix the song. I can master. I could do all of this,
Mm.
right? And I hate paying people to do things for me, especially when it comes to art.
Right.
So fuck it. Why not? Why not learn?
Hmm.
Writing lyrics allowed me to really understand how I'm feeling up here.
Right. Right.
It always made me think, like, how do you feel, bro? Like, how do you
Mm.
feel? Express it. And I did. And it was just an entity that isn't like a physical thing that always had my back. And it just taught me so much about myself.
One of the things I think stands out there is this idea of like taking your emotions and putting it, just like writing it down and then expressing it that way. Um, I know like I've looked a lot into, you hear it all the time now, especially like journaling and like how important it is to like put your feelings and thoughts
Of
down, because
course.
a lot of people just keep a lot in their head, and that's something I journal a decent amount now. Um,
Hmm.
but this is super interesting to me because I never viewed music. I never, like, me, I've recorded my own type of stuff, but I've
Of
never,
course, yeah.
I don't want to say never, but I definitely didn't look music or the music that I was creating through that lens in that way. So like this idea,
Right.
and the biggest reason probably for that is your lyrics. And I find there's not many artists now that can do this, especially when they're earlier on in their careers. Like, you really put for most of your songs, because some of them obviously there's more creative expression in different
Yeah.
ways, right? But that's one way to put it, right? But like you're really real, like you're super super real about what you're talking about, and like that's what resonates, I find, with people the most when it's real, right? Was it
Yeah.
always that real? Like was it always that like, okay, I'm gonna talk about this and like really get into it, or did it take more time and
Yeah.
refining to get to that point?
The reason, obviously you were mentioning journaling and stuff like that when it comes to expressing yourself. And I used to do that a lot myself until I started writing songs.
Mm,
The reason lyrics help me, like writing lyrics specifically, helped me a lot more than journaling for me personally,
okay.
is because I feel like when you're writing lyrics, you're forced to fit certain things into a certain cadence with a certain rhyme scheme.
Right.
And it really, really makes you think about how you're going to express those feelings. And it makes
Oh,
you express those feelings in a different way, which for some reason unlocks a different type of understanding for
that
how you
makes
feel.
so much
For me
sense.
personally, at least. So anyway, so I woke up that morning, I was fucking tilted. I was like, bro, you know what? That like this can't run. This shit is not about to ruin my day.
Mm,
I wrote a whole song in about 15 minutes. I waited for my parents to go out and do groceries because this was during COVID. It was still lockdown and stuff. So I was back home with my parents for about a year, and I hated recording with them at home. So I was waiting, especially with this song, like especially with these type of
right.
things. So I waited for them to go out grocery shopping. I told my sister, "Yo, go into your room, close the door, and just plug your ears, pretend I'm not
Yeah.
here." I recorded this song. I got all my feelings out. I was blasting it on the speakers, like mixing it and stuff like that. And yeah, that song is now called 2020 Vision. And that was like the prime example of how I write my lyrics. If I'm feeling a certain type of way, fuck like crying about it or being upset or whatever. I'm just going to try and express it in a different way and turn that negativity into something positive. And sometimes, sometimes I'm feeling smug. Sometimes I'm feeling happy. Sometimes I'm feeling hyped. I want to write about that too. You don't have to be depressed and sad all the time. I would say my music has always been authentic to what I'm experiencing in life, authentic to how I feel in that moment specifically. Like we experience so many emotions every day, all the time. So why not write about them, in that moment? And I feel like that's always how my music's been. And it's really helped me get clarity on a lot of situations in my life as well. So I definitely owe it to music for sure, for helping me through a lot of tough times, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's dope. That's super dope. And that makes total sense with the authenticity. Um, I totally agree. I mean, we could talk about that for ages. Like that's really, but
Oh yeah.
especially with the way music's going and people even online, like people can see through the bullshit way easier now. And they're going to
Right.
continue to. So, um, yeah. Okay. So one of the things you touched on too is, and I'm a big proponent of this. I've changed my kind of stance on it in a way, but the idea of consistency and creating consistently all the time, even when you're like, I mean, I'm still. There's ways to word this better. I got I got a lot of flack on Twitter for this, but
I saw.
yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
But like one of the things, especially I think when artists of any sort are starting out, like as when you can get those reps in, there's nothing like getting those reps in. And why I say like, oh, if as a new artist you should drop like, let's say weekly, right?
Hmm.
That get it's a big part of that isn't always about the drops, but it's really about the consistency because the lessons you learn doing that shit daily
Of
or whatever
course.
you like,
Hmm.
that's really real. And when you have a schedule or you kind of regimented it in that way, like yeah, there might be times you're not fully into it or fully feeling it 100%,
Hmm.
but pushing that extra mile can definitely get you like so many lessons,
I
right?
agree.
um
I 100% agree.
yeah. So tell me, and I think you're a good guy to ask about this because you're still someone that I know that you're heavily focused on the creative aspect of it. It's not like you're just going in and just making, anything. You're still very focused
Yeah.
on creative aspects and all that. For someone that's starting out making music, and especially because you've been mixing and mastering all your own stuff, you've been putting out all your stuff. Now I know you said you have someone kind of helping you with marketing, but for the most part, up until this point, you were doing everything on your own. Um,
Yeah. Even cover arts, all that
yes,
stuff. Like,
yes. So to an artist coming up, why would that be like a direction that they might want to go? Like, why would that kind of be the direction that they want to go? And also in that, how would you do that? Like how would you, cuz bro, like I'm not gonna lie, man. Like doing the cover art, doing the this, like doing the mix, doing the master. It not only doing it is one thing, but also having to learn all that. Like there is definitely a learning curve involved at some point.
100%.
So what kind of tips could
Yeah.
you give to someone that's trying to build all those skills and get those things going for them?
Well, the first thing, and I feel like the most important thing, and I will always, 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 always stand by this, is you have to love it. You have to enjoy it. If your primary goal from at the start of music, the reason you want to get into it is either you want to be famous or you want to make money, forget it. Forget it. Because instantly you've lost authenticity. The whole point of art is self-expression, in my humble opinion. The whole point of art is self-expression. So I think you need to love it, right? And actually this is a huge reason why I didn't drop out of school to pursue this full time. And the reason I personally didn't want to do that was because I feel like if I had done that, it forces art to become my livelihood. It forces art to become something that I need to use to pay my bills.
Mm,
And that subconsciously puts you in such a box where if you feel like you're going to try something different or try and be creative or do something out of the norm, it could potentially fail and not make you the money that you need to pay the bills that month, right? You end up, in my opinion, sticking to what's selling currently, what's mainstream, what's
mm,
popping. And that's how you have clones in this industry. That's how you get washed in and saturated with people. And that's just my philosophy. Obviously there's no right or wrong option, and I feel like if I got as good as I am now but in like a tenth of the time, then yeah, okay, maybe at that point it's like, yeah, fuck it, I'll drop out of school because I'm a fucking prodigy at this
yeah.
shit. But for like anybody who just wants to get into this, that has some background in music or even without that, and they want to get into learning theory or whatever, my biggest advice, first and foremost, is to know the reason why you're doing it and to not throw off the rest of your life for it. Unless you genuinely know that there's absolutely nothing else that you want to do barring the music, and you feel like there's nothing else that you're good at in life barring the music, right? The only reason I have the luxury to come home and to work on all these things and challenge these learning curves is because I have a secure job that's paying my bills and allowing me to live in a nice ass fucking apartment. Like, to be able to build my studio and buy equipment is that job that I went to university for, right? Like, I'm living very comfortably, and I have the luxury to get home at 5:30, sit my ass down at my desk, and just produce until I fall asleep. I have the luxury to do that, and that luxury allows me to be creative. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out for me, if that specific thing that I'm working on that week, or if I'm working on a project for a month that's more experimental, if it doesn't work out, okay, back to the drawing board. It's not going to affect my livelihood. So definitely the first piece of advice is love it, and make sure that you're making time for it in your life, but you're not dedicating every single dying second of your life and every single ounce of energy of your life into it. You really need to like manage your time and make smart decisions for yourself, um, to give yourself that time and not force yourself to learn all these things fast.
Mm,
That's the luxury that's really the biggest luxury in music, is having time. That's the biggest luxury. And like I said, to do that, you need to know how to immerse it into your life rather than putting everything on your life on hold for it. So definitely starting out, that's my advice. That's definitely my advice starting out, right?
mm,
And also knowing why you want to do it. As for, as for what it takes to be able to learn all these things at once, there's no better way to learn than to get your hands in there and just do,
mm,
right? It's very easy to say like, yeah, I'm going to do some research and I'm going to watch some videos and I'm going to do this. But I'm telling you, and I've learned this through many different things, not just from music, but from school also, from playing football, from doing a lot of things. You can watch someone do something, you can read on something, you can do research. The moment you are plucked into that scenario where you need to execute, you feel absolutely lost. You blank out completely. You're like, holy shit, what have I got
yeah.
myself into?
Mm,
So that's definitely something you need to just, that's a barrier. That's the initial barrier you need to break, is just doing, just doing.
Mm,
And if you those, you know, the research that you do is based on the things that you're doing. So if you're in the DAW and there's a thing, you're like, oh, for example, like how do I send how do I route a track to the mixer or whatever? Yeah, do your research on that and then do it. But to Google like how to make beats or how to, you know, just super vague stuff like that, you're most likely never going to learn anything until you actually sit down and start doing it.
mm,
And once you've broken past that first barrier and you're doing it and you're learning now, like you mentioned, there's gonna be days where you're just like, I fucking hate this shit. Like I don't want to do this today. Just do it. Just do it. Because at the end of the day, like if I have beat block, which you of all people will know that beat block used to beat my ass. Beat block used to beat the living shit out of me. Like, especially a couple years ago, right?
mm,
The only way I was able to get through those beat block periods was just keep making beats, right? And I know everyone deals with it differently, but for
mm,
me, it's just like I'll make a beat, and if it's trash, scrap it. I'll come back the next day, make another beat. If it's trash, scrap it. That's my second biggest piece of advice. So my first one, I mentioned it already, about, you know, how much you have to love it and also balance it within your life, incorporate it so it doesn't become a chore. The second piece of advice is just keep grinding, just keep working. Like it doesn't matter. Like even when I was first learning how to do all this stuff, like half the beats I was making were dog shit, but it doesn't matter because I would sit down, I would make a beat, I would express myself through my music, and that would make me feel better. First and foremost, that's the important thing. I don't care if the beat's good or not. It made me feel good,
mm,
right? It made me feel good to sit down and do this. Like I just felt like that nigga. Like it just made
yeah,
me feel good,
yeah.
you know? So yeah, like that's literally my advice for anybody that's starting out in this. There's nothing you can't do. I know it's a crazy learning curve. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat. Like the learning curve is pretty fucked. It took me like 2 or 3 years to really get this stuff on lock, and I still have so much to learn 6 years later now, right? And like I've met so many dope people in the process, and they've taught me so much, including you. I mean, I feel like you've taught me of all the people I've met, I feel like you've taught me the most.
No,
You
that's
were on my ass about sound selection. You're on my ass about sound selection all the time. Like, bro, that hi-hat sucks. That snare sucks. It used to piss me off so much. It used to piss me
I
off.
remember.
But I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that. Like now looking back, I'm so grateful for that. But yeah, you just have to work through that. You have to do it because you love it. And it won't feel like work at all, ever. It won't. Absolutely not. So you can do it, man. You can engineer, you can mix, you can make beats, you can sing, you can teach yourself things, you can learn graphic design, you can learn video editing.
Because the one of the reasons I tell people to do that consistency shit is really like, it's really for to actually avoid something, which is what you mentioned, which was you know, if I take a week break, that could potentially turn into 2, turn into 3, you know?
Procrastinate,
exactly.
yeah.
So what goes from like, okay, I need to get my creativity back, I'm not feeling it, something's not working, turns into something you didn't probably anticipate or want. And it's one of the things that when I'm developing artists now, or I'm telling them, or producers that I'm talking to, whatever, like I just say, I call it like a trap, or like a common trap that artists fall into. And I just bring it up like that. Like, look, the reason you're doing this, you know, is so you don't fall into this trap of basically never releasing, because so many artists and producers fall into that. And also this idea that you're gonna meet so many people if they just see you working, and that's so true. Any like consistency, that's one of the things with consistency. Like, regardless, there's some you can't even put. It's hard to even put into words like, oh, you're gonna put this much and this many people are gonna reach out, or like, simply just be consistent, and you're gonna notice so many beautiful things come out, especially with the people reaching out. Like, some of my,
of course,
some of my content that I'm not even like the most proud of, like I'm mad proud, but it's not, I know it could be improved, and I'm like, people might not take that Twitter thread, for example. Like when I posted that, I was like you know, like I really just wrote it quick at night. It was like 2 a.m. I've talked about this before, but it was late, and it was like, I want to write my first Twitter thread. Like, let me just talk about some shit I believe in, I feel, right? You know, okay, I'm gonna promote my sample pack at the end, you know, drop. And you know, that for like, if I knew it was gonna get that many eyes and ears, I would have you know, tweaked it a little. But it's simply just like putting that stuff out, putting your work out, and being consistent with it will bring attention to you, And just like people, again, I can't even articulate it. People will see your name more. They might listen. You never know. You might get like, you never know. I mean, it takes one ear to be like, yo, this is crazy. He shows it to his
Yeah.
homie, who shows it to his friend, who like is a manager at this, and next thing you know, you're like, producing for.
Wait, let me add
Yeah,
something to
go
what
ahead,
you were
go ahead,
saying
go ahead.
first. Not only not only will consistency bring you that type of traction, for me, the biggest thing is that it makes me feel so good. It just makes me feel good to sit down and make music and record and just create something out of nothing all the time. And I just can't seem to run out of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I feel so good. It brings me like a dopamine that I can never feel with anything else.
Yeah,
It's like a sense of fulfillment that
yeah.
like I'm doing this because I love it and I'm fucking good at it as well. And it's just every day that you work, it's further affirming that yeah, like this is meant to be. This is something I love to do. And you feel like the puzzle pieces are just fitting perfectly every
Mm,
single fucking day that you're working on this.
mm,
And as important as the things that you mentioned are, of course, just as important is just feeling
yeah.
fulfilled. You feel good about yourself. It really, really helps, like even mentally, like it helps so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. So that's all I
No,
wanted
that's
to add
real.
to
No,
that.
no,
But yeah.
absolutely. And that I totally agree. One of the things I definitely want to ask you about, because I'm kind of noticing it in, maybe not, like I'm noticing it a little bit more, and I'm starting to see like different sides of, what people have to deal with as they're going about their musical journey,
Yeah.
or as they're trying to grow, or whatever it might be, or as they're trying to create music really. Um,
Hmm.
the fact that you have this output and you have a job, like a real, like a serious job, at the same time, that's pretty, like, a lot of people really box themselves in, with especially that, like, oh, I don't have time, like, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to, like, there definitely are people that work so many hours they straight up don't have
Of
time, like,
course.
and
Yeah.
I'm empathetic to that. um
Hmm.
but I find that a lot of people use it as an excuse, and not realizing it's an excuse, because they haven't even tried to push that, like, try and, like, just try it, let's see where this goes. And the idea of, like, putting it as a part of your daily routine. Do you ever get, like, do you ever come home from work like tired, like you're just like, man, like, I could, but I'm just like actually just tired, like, do you get that? Or if not, like, how do you keep your energy, going? What kinds of things are a part of your life that allow for this type of output?
Well, this is gonna sound like a little psychotic, but like, bro, the thing is, I could be drained on like no sleep, and I don't need energy to make music.
Mm,
Like you know how a lot of people get home and they wind down by watching Netflix
yeah,
or watching
yeah.
anime or watching whatever, which I do too. I love doing that stuff.
Mm,
Music is how I wind down. Like it always has been. So I get home from work dead tired. Like today, I'm tired as shit. I woke up at 5 a.m. I just got my cartilage pierced like 2 days ago as well. So I've only been able to sleep on one side. So I've
yeah.
been waking up like every hour thinking I'm gonna turn my head and I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah.
I can't because my ear's still
Yeah.
sore. So I'm probably on like 4 hours of sleep right now.
Mm-hmm.
I went to work today. I was working with wires. I was doing circuits. I was like in a meeting. I did a bunch of stuff. I came home. I just cooked like the most delicious meal I've made in a long time. I came, sat here, do a podcast with you. And the crazy thing is, once this podcast is over, I'm turning my speakers on and I'm
Yeah.
going to make
Yeah.
beats because that's how I wind down. Like,
Mm.
I don't need energy. Like, if anything, making music helps me kind of end my day. It's kind of like the period,
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's how I end my day. And of course, I can't speak for everybody that has, that are working like full time,
Yeah.
whatever. But in my case specifically, like I work 40 hours a week. I have a 9 to 5, pretty flexible. Like I can show up to work between like 8 and 10, basically. Like I don't have a set time to show up. So I usually just show up like around 8:45 so I can leave right before 5, get home at 5:30. It gives me time to cook, gives me time to clean, gives me time to eat, gives me time to watch a little bit of. I've been watching One Piece recently,
Mm.
and it gives me some time to watch a couple episodes. And then around 8, 9 o'clock, I turn my speakers on, make a beat, get some uploads going. I literally released a beat like 50 minutes ago,
Yeah.
like right as we started this podcast.
Mm.
Like a beat already came out. Record like last week. I recorded an entire, like I did a 6-track EP in 5 days,
Mm.
from just getting home, making a beat, writing a lyric, recording the song. and mixing, mastering, whatever. And I just did that every day for 5 days, and that's an EP,
Yeah.
bang, right there. So, like I said, and this will always go back to the same thing. You just have to love it,
Mm.
because if you love something, you'll never make excuses for it ever. Like, I don't need energy to make music. It's just something that I love to do. It's like a lot of, like people like doing certain hobbies. This is my form of, winding down in the evening once I've had a long day. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's really how I
No.
view it. It sounds a little psychotic, but
No,
like
no, no.
that's really how
No,
I
no,
view it.
I appreciate it. It's real. And I think one of the biggest things with this is that like idea of creating without expectation. I brought it up in a few other podcasts. And I realized like subconsciously I would expect to like get something out of the beat, like or create something like if you just create without expectation, then it's just like you're creating, you're gonna make something cool, like, and that I feel like that type of mentality goes along with like being able to just do this consistently.
Of course. And it gives you freedom. It gives you creative freedom.
Yes, yeah.
Like, not having pressure. It's kind of like, think of this. You can take the most famous painter, right? Put a gun to his head and tell him produce a $1 million painting by the end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
He's making shit. But you give that guy the optimum space. You tell him, just go in there and just cook. Do your thing. Let him cook,
Mm-hmm.
right? He will most likely produce the most amazing piece that you will ever see, because he's been put in an optimal situation to be creative freely without any
Mm-hmm.
expectation, right? And that's what I try to do for myself. And that goes back to my point about the reason I personally chose to stay in school and continue to work, because that takes care of everything I need to be able to live comfortably
Mm-hmm.
and still be able to enjoy myself, still be able to go out and see my friends and travel and do all the things that I love to do. But also at the same time have enough time in my day and on my weekends and stuff to be able to focus at least 2-3 hours into my music, right? I want to create that optimal scenario for myself, so to make sure that I'm not getting stressed creatively, because that will allow me to have the most amount of creative freedom,
Yeah.
which I am able to then produce my best work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's really how I see it for myself personally.
Fire.
So, you know.
Yeah, and this is one thing I want to touch on now, because at this point, bro, like you've done everything in my opinion. Like, I mean, you can go a billion different paths, but like you've done so many things right when it comes to actually releasing your music, promoting yourself, like really just not only creating it but actually dropping it. But one area which I find super interesting is you mentioned this, and a lot of artists do this too, but you've really like exercised this idea of not like, because some people, if they have money, and I've been guilty of this too in different endeavors, like spending money comes first and then like creating and releasing comes after, and it's like, that can kind of affect it. But you're at a point now where you've done a few drops with, not as like big of a, I don't want to say budget, but like you're not throwing as much money into it in terms of like the marketing and the ad, like, but you're at a point now where you've released so many songs, you're sitting on so many songs, you've learned so much by doing it yourself, that when you do hire someone, or when you do go that, decide to explore, or if you want to explore that side of like, all right, let me just see what I can do if I like, market it this way and like that,
Yeah.
it could change your entire, I believe this with quite a few, maybe not quite a few, but I believe this with a few artists I know. Your entire career could change off like dead ass one song being promoted one way,
Yeah.
and you said you're working with someone who's marketing too, but what are your like ideas, or are you looking at like pushing, more money or marketing in a different way now, or are you still focused just on, let me just take my time with it, it'll let me do my thing as I do it?
Well, I mean, I think the first the first thing I'll say is the reason I didn't really throw much money, and in hindsight, I'm very grateful for
Yeah.
this, that I didn't do this, is because I didn't have any fucking money.
Yeah.
Like I was in university, I was a student. Like, all my money is going towards rent
Yeah.
and feeding myself.
100%. Nah, that's real. It's
So,
real. Yeah.
I and I guess that's part of the reason why I told myself I was just going to learn everything myself, because I don't want to pay money to people that can do something that I can
Yes.
learn how to do
Mm-hmm.
myself. But now that I'm working, listen, I'm very comfortable now, right? I've been working for 2 months, and like I'm very, very comfortable. Yeah, I'm in a good
Mhm.
place. So I have the luxury now. Thankfully, I'm so grateful, like, to everybody that helped me like get to this point, through university, and just pushed me to keep working my ass off to get to this point, because I'm starting to reap the benefits already. But I've definitely started to look into, investing more money for promotion and marketing. Because listen, man, listen, even though I can do everything musically, I am not a marketing genius by any fucking means. The main thing right now that I'm testing, and it's still super like, it's still super like alpha mode, you can call it, like it's
Mhm.
beta
Yeah,
testing,
yeah.
whatever you want to call it. But I've been working with so her name is Ice. Shout out to her. I love you so much, by the way. If you're watching, I absolutely love you. You are incredible. I had her over at my place here because she was back in the city. Um, so she got here, we hung out, whatever, and I was like, oh, by the way, like I want to play you my album. Like I have not shown people this. Like I've only shown like my closest friends, but like I want to play you this because you are like probably the most talented musician I know. Like or you're up there. So I just want to get your honest thoughts as well. And she's studying like media marketing and stuff, and she has a lot of networking connections when it comes to that. So um like she knows what she's doing. Like she knows what she's doing. And I played her my album, and instantly this girl's just pulling out her phone, like texting everybody she knows, like, yo, like we need to get him to perform, like
Mm.
let's do, like, get him at a festival, let's get him to perform at a club, like this shit is crazy,
Yeah.
whatever. And she told me, she's like, I want to manage your release, like I want and all that just because she believed in me. And like shit, man, that shit had me emotional, I can't lie. i've
Mm.
never i've never seen someone get that excited about my
Yeah.
music, and that's why I speak so highly of her.
Mhm.
But for me, like my goal, my biggest goal, my main goal this year is to just release every week. That's
Nice.
really my main goal, is just release as much music as I can. But outside of that, my goal, I want to perform. I want to perform
Mm.
this summer. Veld, literally across my street, like
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I need to perform.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like somewhere. I don't care where. I will perform in front of 10 people if I
Yeah.
have to. I do not
Yeah.
care. But that is something I for sure want to do this summer. You mentioned also kind of going with the flow and taking it slow. I've given myself a time. Like I've given myself, like, you know what? I want to do X amount of things in X amount of time. Because I work very well under pressure. I do.
Yeah.
Like I work incredibly well under pressure. So I want to make sure that I always have something reminding me, like, yo, get on your ass, like fucking work,
Mhm.
right?
I'm so glad you found, that's so much better than like, oh, I'm gonna pay, because I didn't like, the money thing is just one aspect. Like you don't have to even put any money into it, and you can still have a great marketing. Something beautiful will come out of this partnership that you have.
Yeah.
I every artist that I
Yeah. Shout out to
shout
her,
out to her,
man.
man, and every artist that I develop, like, or try to work with and develop, like, one of the main things that is actually one of the hardest things, depending on the city you live in, is to find that person that's like, that has not only the skill, and not, that's the best part too with your situation. Like, she's learning at the same time, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that is almost, the
Of
fact that
course.
she's willing to do that is, that's way better than someone just like, being there, you throw money at, and like, they give you a marketing plan, and
Yeah.
they'll do it for you, kind of like. Shout out to her. And that's huge, right, dude? That's
100%.
something I try to
Yeah.
get my artists to be like, yo, like, I'll even tell them, yo, if you have a friend that's super interested in the business side, like, just get someone that you can just start to work with, and even we can teach them stuff. Like, let's, get, because that, having that part of the equation taken care of, especially when you're not like, fully into that realm, like, you don't always want to just be marketing,
Oh, I'm
yeah,
useless.
yeah. So it's
I'm
like,
useless.
yeah, so that's cool, man. No, that's really dope that you got that. Yeah, so look, I want to give you the floor and just like promote what you got to promote. I have your Instagram links and all the links in the bio or in the description. But the floor is yours to talk about what you want to talk about.
Okay, well, the first thing I want to say is that I was the other day I was on TikTok live, and there was this guy running a radio, and he played one of my songs, and he struggled really hard to pronounce my name because he saw the V and got confused. So the first thing I'm going to tell everybody, and I'm going to say this once and for all, it's my first podcast, and like I just want to set the record straight. My name is Wvssim with an A, but the V is only there because if I put the A, there's 3 other people by that name on Spotify. So I turned that A upside down into a V. So it is pronounced Wvssim. It's pronounced Wvssim, not Wvssim, not Wvssim. It's pronounced Wvssim. So that's the first thing I
That's
wanted to say.
important.
The second thing is, yeah, absolutely 100% important. The next thing I want to say is I dropped a sequel to Dead to Me, which was my first song ever. Dead to Me 2, that was 3 weeks ago I dropped now. Um, and yeah, I basically revisited Dead to Me 1. I revisited those lyrics and just, it was kind of like a little update on my life 3 years later. One of the best beats I've ever made also. So definitely go check that out. I'm on all platforms because I'm not releasing a 16 track album right off the bat. I'd rather split it up to make sure that people are digesting my work weekly. It's a lot easier. This is my actually side note, another piece of advice for anyone starting out just like me. And this is valuable advice that Faham gave me. Um, but basically, if you're gonna work your ass off on a 45-minute album, don't drop the album as a 45-minute album because it's a lot easier for people to take 2 minutes out of their day to listen to a song versus 45 minutes or an hour to listen to an entire album. You want your work to be heard, drop it in pieces. And that way it shows that you're consistent. Even though I did this whole album in 2 weeks, but I'm releasing it over 4 months. So that gives people the illusion that like I'm here just grinding my ass off every week, which I still am. But listen, the amount of dedication it would take to be able to make quality music once a week and release it once a week like that is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So prepare in bulk, release in an extended period of time to prolong that. That way you're always just attracting, you're always creating traction towards your profiles, towards your Spotify. And that's just how you keep your growth consistent.
Yes.
So that's what I'm doing right now. It's a 16 track album. I haven't told anyone the name of the album yet. I'm going to keep that under wraps for now, but the songs are currently rolling out and the whole project will be out on April 20th. So in 3 months actually, but song a week. So yeah, that's pretty much what the most recent amount of work that I have coming out confirmed right now. I am working on like 4 other projects. I just finished an EP last week, which has a song in there that is incredible. It's probably my best song to date, and that's really the song that I want to start really like testing promotion stuff
Nice.
and
Yeah.
really, really, really getting behind it because I believe in this song. It's crazy. I can play it to you
Yeah, I'd
after this
like to.
podcast.
Yeah,
Actually, I'll show it to you. But yeah. So that's what I would like to say. It's pronounced Wvssim. Check me out on Spotify. All my fucking music's hard. Don't sleep on my shit. Just go listen to it. Like it's the least you could do. Like it's the least you could do. I would greatly
yeah.
appreciate it. And at the end of the day, if my lyrics or if my songs speak out to even 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever amount of people, I feel like I've done my job as an artist. I've expressed myself through an art form. Somebody has received it and it's helped them out in their life or it's given them something to relate to. I don't give a shit about anything after that.
I appreciate that. I would have ended it there, but I want to build off that, like a few things. One is that,
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean,
go ahead.
definitely like that release, the weekly releases, like, I want to kind of maybe just clarify that is for like people early, because I know, bruh, someone's gonna come out and be like, well, like Drake and like it's like
Yeah.
it's for earlier on in your career that's very. But anyways,
Yeah, that's what I
yeah,
said,
I know,
though,
and
yeah.
I know you did. I just and also, I mean, one thing I've recently started to kind of almost forget, and this is a compliment to you, that you produce your own shit. So that's one thing
Thank you, bro.
I
I
want people
appreciate
to
that.
also know, like when you listen to Wvssim stuff, like he's produced literally like 99% of the stuff you're gonna hear on his platforms. He's produced it himself, and that's in itself impressive and really just awesome. Shout out.
And a few collabs with you. Don't
Yeah,
forget.
yeah,
I have a
yeah.
couple. I have a couple
Yeah,
with you as
yeah.
well. Don't forget about
Yeah,
that.
but I'm not gonna lie, bro. The stuff you produce on your own is really, I appreciate it, but that stuff is crazy. And also, there's something for everyone in your releases. So like, if you're into
Right.
any sort of rap, like any sort of hip hop, that type of stuff, like, and even the R&B side, more and more, like, there's something for everybody in there. And that's really what kind of the beauty of his projects is. I remember when he sent me the last I mean, you could call it a few different things, but the last big, like you combined, you had three separate releases, projects that you did that were all a part
Right.
of a bigger story, or a bigger project. And that, bro, there's something in every third of that you had, like every part of that you had, there was at least a couple songs in there that were, for me, crazy. And anyways, I don't want to ramble on too long. I appreciate your time, bro. I appreciate your time.
100%. For my first podcast experience, this couldn't have gone better. Like, I really
It
enjoyed
was
this.
great. Yeah.
I talk a lot. I talk way too much. So the podcasts are
There
good
you
for
go,
me.
bro.
I want to do this
No,
more.
and I appreciate
I
that.
like
It was
this.
actually like, even though, like, yeah, you talk a lot, but it's not like a bad, like, first, it's great for podcasts. Second, you actually, everything you talked about was like exactly on point with what I was at. It's all, these are all gems, bro. I don't know how much of this I'm gonna cut out because it was all valuable. So anyways, thank you, bro.
Of course, man. Anytime.